Hey guys, it's Hannah here, and I am walking the doggos. There they are. There are the doodles. And I had something I was thinking about, and I wanted to share this with you. Tithing is more powerful and more important than budgeting. I know I'm going to get a lot of kickback on this video. I understand that. I know there'll be plenty of people who disagree with me, and that's totally okay, because there's a lot of people who disagree with me on a lot of things. So that must mean I'm doing something right. But but the idea of tithing, giving that first 10% to God. I remember for so long, my husband and I, and we had a big family. We were young, and we couldn't afford to tithe. We had no money. My husband was bringing in $1,200 gross a month. $1,200 gross. That equates to, what, you do the math, like something like less than like $15,000 a year. So that's what we were living on. We were basically like living in the hood, subsidized housing, and kids, no money. And I remember we could not afford to tithe. Like, there was nothing. We did the budget every month. Every month we would go over. We didn't have enough money to make it to the end of the month. And I'm not talking like we spent it on a lot of stuff. It was like beans and rice, but when you're talking about $1,200, after you take out rent, after you take out health insurance, after you take out all that, there's no money. So our budget didn't make any sense. Like, we had no money. I remember thinking, there's no possible way we can tithe $1,200 a month gross. That would be $120. I was like, there's no way. That means we have no money for groceries. Like, something's got to give. And I remember thinking, like, we don't have, look at our budget. We can't do it. And I remember seeing in God's word, when he says in Malachi, test me in this, like bring your offering to the temple, test me in this and see if I will not open the windows of heaven. And basically it says there in that last chapter of Malachi, and pour out so much that you cannot contain it all. And I was like, okay, so my way isn't working, right? My way, this budget, and I've got the notebook paper. We couldn't afford a computer back then, but I had like the notebook paper and the columns and everything set up down to like the decimals, the digits. I had it down to like the dollar. It couldn't make sense. And so I'm like, okay, the way I'm doing it does not make sense. Like, this does not make any sense. So I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I'm going to be radical. I'm just going to tithe. Like, we're broke anyway. So what's it going to hurt? We're operating at a deficit anyway. So we did something radical, and I wrote a check to our church. And I remember walking out to the mailbox. My palms were sweaty. My heart was beating, and I knew I had to put it in the mailbox that day, or else I would not do it. I would back out. The logical part of my brain would kick in over the spiritual part of my brain, and I knew I wouldn't give it. So I put it in the mailbox, freaking out. And I can tell you right now, that was when our finances began to turn around. And it is nothing logical that happened. I began to invest in myself. He began to find other jobs. I began to grow as become a life coach and take on clients. But all these things happened in supernatural ways. So this is why I'm saying the reason that tithing is more powerful than budgeting is because a budget is how the earthly system operates. But tithing is how the heavenly system operates. So in the Bible, it says that everything that is seen comes out of that which is unseen. So if we want to start this blessing of God, start it to work in our lives, it's going to take an initial priming the pump. Like, I don't know about you, but like when I grew up, I was like, I am a Southern girl, and I grew up and there were wells and we ran around barefooted and there were pumps, and you primed a pump, right? I don't know if you know what that is, but it's basically you have to like prime a thing and get the water flowing. When you tithe, it's like priming the pump. When you're budgeting, it's like sitting at the pump and collecting the drops and trying to figure out what to do with it. So if you want to get this blessing of God working in your favor, like start priming the pump. Start investing in God's kingdom. and just see what he does. And I know there's people who will argue with me, and it's like, no, you got to be fiscally responsible and you need to create a budget. You better create a blessing before you create a budget. Like I'm just saying, because a blessing trumps a budget every day of the week. The blessing of God puts a budget to shame because it doesn't make any sense. Like the blessing that God has for you, the only way to access this is to operate in faith. That's the only way. It says in God's word that the righteous live by faith. That's how we live. So if you want to live in the blessing of God, it takes faith. And faith is the backbone of tithing, because tithing says, I'm going to put this money in a place where I cannot, with physical eyes, see how I'm going to get a return. Everywhere else we place our money in a budget, we can see the return. We can see, okay, I went to the grocery store and I got enough to feed my family for 2 weeks. I paid this amount for electricity that I can see in my house. I paid the note on the car and I can drive in the car. Everything that we are putting our money, we can see with physical eyes. But just like Jesus told Thomas, he said, how much more blessed are those who believe without seeing? Because Thomas said, now I see, I believe. And Jesus said, that's great, but how much more blessed are those who don't see yet believe? And so when we put our money where we can't with physical eyes see the return, and we have to believe in faith that God has something on the other side of that giving, that is operating by faith, and that is the blessing at work. And it will show up in your wallet. It will show up in your checking account. It'll show up in your savings accounts. It'll show up all over the place. And he will guard you. He will surround you. He will protect you because you're operating in faith and operating by a covenant blessing. And out of that comes the budget. Create your budget around faith instead of trying to work faith into your budget. Oh, that's like a quote. That's just, I want to help someone today, because there's someone today who's like, nope, tithing is an Old Testament thing and we're free from the tithe. That's cool. You can believe that all the way to the homeless shelter, because that's where we were headed. The thing is, do you really want to fight against the covenant blessing? Do you want to stand on your principles of, no, we need to create a budget and we don't need to tithe? Do you really want to fight to stand in that place until you're so broke and busted you can't do anything about it? Because that's where we were. That's where I was, and it wasn't a good place to be. I've been rich, I've been poor. Being poor is no good. Because here's the thing, it's not just about you and your lack. It's about you not being able to help anyone else. And we are here for something bigger than just ourselves. Just taking care of our kids, and that's it. We are here to manifest God's kingdom here on earth as it is in heaven. It's really important. I'm just helping someone today because you've been trying to figure out how to tithe. What happens on the other side of your tithe? What if it's something you can't figure out? What if it's something that cannot work itself into your logical mind? That is 100% a move of faith, and see how God shows up. If you've been trying to figure out how to tithe, don't try to figure it out anymore. Just be crazy. Just operate in total faith and see what happens. See what happens. Prove God right. So anyway, just wanted to help you out with that, because I remember being in that position. It was no fun. We're trying to budget pennies when God had real wealth in store for us on the other side of that faith move. Just try it out. Just try it out and watch what happens. Because I know God, I know his character, and I know his covenant, and he is 100% faithful. I love you so much, friend. Be blessed like crazy.